Well, ladies and gentlemen, if there's a clash of religion here, it did not start on 9/11. It did not start with September 11, 2001, and it did not start with the Muslims. The clash started 2,000 years ago when there was only Jews, and then someone decided that, you know what? He did not like the way Jewish religion was going, so he decided to do something about it. And that person was Jesus Christ. He decided, this is not the way to go. We need something different. And since that day, many, many things have taken place between Jews, Christians, and Muslims. But today we are going to concentrate with my guest, who is Professor of History, Dr. E. Michael Jones. He wrote a book called The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit and Its Impact on World History. Now, I want everybody to have an open mind, because this is an extremely important book coming from a man who had studied the subject and knows a lot about it. This has nothing to do with Jews or Christians or someone who doesn't like Jews or someone who is anti-Semitic. And we're going to see exactly what his book is all about and what does he think it's going to be the end of this. I mean, it's been 2,000 years since we've been going through this. Is it going to be, are we going to see an end to it? Dr. Jones, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dr. Tillawi. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Dr. Jones, I want just very briefly, the Jewish revolutionary spirit and its impact on world history. Very briefly, in 2 minutes, can you tell me what it's all about?
Yes, it's about what I consider the turning point in history. The Jewish people were God's chosen people. They had been waiting for a Messiah. When the Messiah finally came, the Jews had to decide whether they were going to accept him or reject him. I'm referring to Jesus Christ here. The Jews who accepted Jesus Christ became known as the Church, the New Israel. The Jews who rejected Jesus Christ not only rejected Jesus Christ, but they rejected the person who sent him, God the Father. But more importantly than that, they rejected God's order for the universe. The Greek word for that is logos. It's the fourth word of St. John's Gospel. Ein arche, ein ha logos is what he says in Greek. In the beginning there was logos, there was order. So you reject Christ, you reject logos, you reject the moral order of the universe, the social order, the political order. When you do that, you become a revolutionary. And so the Jews who rejected Jesus Christ chose Barabbas, who was a revolutionary, and they made a kind of solemn pact here that, they said, let his blood be on us and our people. And they committed themselves to revolution. And that has been that moment sort of set in stone, not in stone, but established the parameters for human history after that fact. Human history from that point on was going to be a struggle between the Jews who accepted Jesus Christ and the Jews who rejected Jesus Christ. And that's what history has been, and that's what this book is about, 2,000 years of that struggle.
So are you telling me that the Jews who rejected Jesus Christ, those are the ones we know today as Jews?
Yes.
Are they the same people, the same theology that was back then, 2,000 years ago?
The theology of rejection took some time to develop. The name of this theology of rejection is the Talmud, and over the next 600 years it got codified. It was
okay. So, if I understand you,
back to the idea of revolution, the revolutionary spirit did not die out there. There was another revolution in 135 when Simon Bar Kokhba rose up against Rome, and this one was almost successful. The Romans were expelled from Palestine for 4 years. Simon Bar Kokhba had coins made with his image. That was a sign of independence. It was working, and then slowly but surely the same thing happened the Romans laid siege to Jerusalem, and at the last minute, Jerusalem fell, and there was massive slaughter. And the Jews were expelled. And the men were exterminated. There were camps set up to exterminate the men, and the women and children were sold into slavery. And that was the end of the Jewish occupation of Palestine for almost 2,000 years.
So if I understand you correctly, this new religion that they started, it was in opposition, complete opposition to what they had before, which is the Scripture, the Old Testament.
That's right. What you begin to see is that the Talmud is ultimately a repudiation of the Torah. That's what it comes down to.
So how come Christians of today look at the Jews or the Israelis in Palestine and call them the chosen people? How come?
There are two answers to that question. The first answer is the Protestant answer. The Protestants were traditionally, and I try to show this in my book, Protestants were Judaizers to a large extent. All of the major Protestant denominations, all the major Protestant movers were Judaizing, which meant basically that you had people who were raised Catholic who did not like the Catholic faith. A lot of them were priests who simply could not accept the Catholic faith. The crucifix, the cross. One of the main actions of the Hussites were an example of what I'm talking about. The people who took over Bohemia in 1410. Jan Zalewski was a Catholic priest who decided he was going to wear a sword. Well, monks are not allowed to wear swords. And so he would stage political theater, and one of the things he would do would be break into churches and smear excrement on crucifixes. This is revulsion at the cross. These are Christians who wanted to live like Jews. They wanted an earthly kingdom. And that has always been the temptation of the Judaizers, to want an earthly kingdom. And that's the history of the Protestants. And so ultimately what you have here is this creation of this thing called dispensational theology, in which, the Jews are God's chosen people. The Protestants have no sense of what the church is. And so they have no sense that the church is the new Israel. And so if you don't know that, then of course you're going to say, well, I guess the Jews are God's chosen people. It's in the Old Testament. I mean, I can read the Old Testament. Sola Scriptura is the Protestant rule. And so that explains, you can give a long, complicated story. Hello? Okay.
Now, let me just stop you here because I have a lot of questions for you, and I want to move it to the last 2,000 years of exactly what happened. I mean, they were destroyed, but now we see a resurrection of Jews. What is happening today?
Well, I mean, basically what you had here was 2,000 years of revolutionary movements in Europe. Basically every revolutionary movement had Jews involved with it. And so one of the significant revolutionary movements was the French Revolution. Napoleon needed the support of the Jews to invade Russia, so he convoked this thing called the Sanhedrin. He granted the Jews citizenship, and that was the first time that had happened in Europe. 100 years after that, 100 years after the French Revolution, there is a lot of ferment in France, a lot of people wondering, what have we gained by the revolution? And so the Catholic Church had a journal at that time, a kind of anti-revolutionary journal called Civiltà Cattolica, and they did a series of 3 articles on the aftermath of the French Revolution, in which they said basically that there was more loss than gain, that any country who rebels against God's law will end up being ruled by the Jews. Now, this caused a reaction. There was a huge reaction in France, and part of the reaction was known as the Dreyfus Affair, and the reaction to the reaction was known as Theodor Herzl and Zionism, who decided that if they couldn't live in France, they could never live in any place in Europe because France was the first country to give them citizenship. And so he started the agitation that led to the occupation of Palestine, which culminated in 1948 with the creation of the Jewish state.